League Podcast Network.
Welcome in, friendos. This is the In This League Fantasy Football Podcast. That's Bogman. I'm Welsh, and we've got a biggie for you today, and we actually got a really good set for you for the next month. So she said, we have got the early, very early, maybe not too early, but pretty early, Scott Bogman PPR ranks breakdown. Those ranks are available right now on our Patreon, and today we are going to be talking to you about them and their biggest differences. So if you would like to get access to our ranks, to Bogman's ranks, of course, which he's got SD and he's got PPR, and we'll even tell you later about what's coming up next, make sure you come and subscribe and check us out at patreon.com/ITL Army. That is where In This League lives. That is where the audio universe, that is us, lives, not us lives. We've got Bogman has got the PPR, which we'll be talking about, available right now. Dynasty, your rookie ranks. We've got baseball stuff. We've got group me rooms. We've got secret shows. We've got live streams. We've got tons more. All of that in celebration of In This League and support of the independent podcast that we are. So you want to get a little head start, get in on Bogman's brain, come and support us at patreon.com/ITL Army. Bogman, we've got video going on. Whatever you're doing, you look like Darth Vader when there's no light. Like, he's had the most brooding, terrifying, scary look because you're lighting in there. You're like, right now, you look like a horror film guy. And then right now you have a light on your face. If you guys want to check it out, youtube.com/inthisleague. We're trying to do a better job about getting some of the episodes up. You can see how terrifying for 1 minute and 30 seconds Bogman looked in the shadows, looking like he is ready to pounce. He's ready to pounce.
Yeah, I was tweeting, and it was doing the bit where you have, you've used too many characters. So I had to go through and decide what words to cut and what spaces to cut and all that stuff while you were talking. So I was like, come on, just do this. This shouldn't.
Did it also have the bit where there's absolutely no light and you look terrifying in the shadows? Bogman in the shadows.
Am I in the shadows right now?
No, you're okay right now, but I'm telling you, whatever screen you had was off. You look like you were ready.
Oh,
to
this
pounce.
Screen
right there. You look murderous, terrifying. Like,
I can't tell because I go away from the I can't see myself because this is on the Twitter. I have the what do you call it, the day theme and night theme. I have the dark theme on mine, so it's I actually have it as Steelers colors.
You should have night theme if you're going to have no lighting in there right now, because
night
you
theme.
you look like you're about to have to break down standard ranks. You look so mad. That's standard ranks, Bogman, and we're not going to be doing that today. We're going to be doing PPR. Also not going to be doing half PPR. That's a good question. Bogman and I were talking about this on the before we started up, before we were doing our show prep and everything like that. And I can appreciate, our boy Seeley is a super hard worker, and he'll do all those ranks, and he believes, and because he believes that it's okay to do it, of course, that he lives by the half PPR standard, which, I think for all intents and purposes, when quote standard scoring, which is non PPR, was way more of a thing, I felt like that half point was a really happy medium. I just don't feel like standard is as much of a thing anymore over the last 3 years. It's not standard. PPR is standard. So I'm not railing on half at all. I think you have to choose one. You got to choose half or you got to choose full. And Bogman has chosen full PPR. In that,
this is what we do most of our leagues, and I feel like most people play PPR.
And it mostly translates to half. There's a couple oddity type of things, and what you'll get, as we're going through this entire offseason, is you're going to get PPR ranks with definitions of who might be up or down in a half PPR. I don't know if you plan to do anything in standard. And then we will be talking about the 2 quarterback / flex, super flex stuff, which will come up a little bit later in the show. We'll tell you about how that's going to be approached. But that is a primer for you as we check in with today, because Bogman release those PPR ranks, and the crux of this show is not going to be breaking them all crazy down. You want to check them out. They're going to be changing every month as we go through. There's going to be updates. And when we get closer into draft season, that's when we'll go heavy, like really heavy positional. What this episode is going to be today is to take a look at your ranks compared to said fantasy pros and how the ones that really jump out is different. And that's what we're going to do today, which I think is a really, really good idea.
Yeah, and I just wanted to check in after I made my rankings and see just kind of where I was after I made them against the Fantasy Pros consensus. And there are some where I looked and I went, okay, I guess they have a point here or there. Maybe I made an adjustment, but I'm telling you, it was like 3 or 4 of those guys. And the rest, I'm like, yeah I'm not moving them. I got them where I got them for a reason. And I will, go through my reasoning when we get there.
Yeah. And we're going to go quarterback, running back, and then we will break it into wide receiver, tight end. So we'll have a couple here that we'll go through. And like I said, the Patreon PPR ranks, if you would like to follow along with what we're looking at and you want to cross-reference, you can do that right now. If you sign up or you're already a part of it, you can come back and do so however you want to do it. This will be a nice look, and that is the main course of what we are going to be doing in this episode. The appetizer, but I look at this as like nachos appetizer. You know how there's appetizers where they're like, oh, we'll bring you like 4 cheese sticks, and you're like, okay, that's an appetizer.
We need the sampler. We're not skinny.
But they offer like nachos or a sampler, and you're like, this is a meal. Well, this is a meal of a topic.
I remember back in the day, just real quick, high school, you used to get the sampler as your meal, didn't you? Wasn't that your deal?
I still do that, actually. Like, not the sampler, but like I will still get appetizers as my meal. Like I'll see, places you go, they might have really good like hummus. Like if you go to Pita Jungle and you get like the hummus trio with pita bread.
Yeah.
I'm golden. I'm good. Nachos. That's another one. Nachos to me can be the full meal. Maybe not trying to set people up to not listen to the rest of the episode, but our meal / appetizer is Julio Jones is out in Atlanta. Now he's not officially traded, but he wants out of there. And we talked about this on our radio show. So much so, this was the big one. So we heard that there was like, he had requested a trade. Atlanta had been out there talking about potentially needing to move him because of cap reasons, blah, blah, blah. He requests a trade. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Well, this piece of audio, you and I have both actually not heard it, but apparently Shannon
I think we were
Sharp,
recording baseball when this happened. So.
Yeah, I think this just happened within the last
morning. Yeah,
it was this morning as we're doing this, where about Julio Jones requesting the trade. Well, apparently on Undisputed, which
why would anybody watch this?
I've never met a person that has watched Undisputed.
I don't know anyone who watches it either.
I've never heard a person been like, hey, did you catch Undisputed today? No, I didn't. Never have I ever done that. Which actually, what's hilarious about that too, is that like back in the day, that was like a PTI thing. When there was PTI and Pardon the Interruption, like those would be two shows you might be like,
is Pardon the Interruption.
Oh, what am I thinking of? You're right. You're absolutely right. You're right about that.
Around the Horn?
Around the Horn. That's what I was thinking of. Around the Horn and PTI. Those would be two shows where you might be like, hey, did you catch blah, blah, blah? And you'd be like, okay, nobody consumes any of that type of television. Like barely anybody consumes television the same way anymore. But like two obnoxious talking head, though I do kind of like Shannon Sharp, blah, blah, blah. All right. So this is on Undisputed with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp. What I gauge here is Shannon Sharp is calling Julio Jones live on the air. And
there's a big, because like, once again, I haven't seen this, you haven't seen this, but there's a big question as to whether Julio knew he was live on television or not.
Yeah. And I mean, if you've ever been in radio and stuff, you do know to tell people, or a podcast, you go, hey, what's up? You're on so-and-so show. You want to let people know that. So let's see if it happens. This is Julio Jones all but confirming he's out. So let's hear it.
You watching, Julio?
I really hope he answers here.
Julio, have the guts to pick up the phone.
Have the guts.
What's happening?
Yeah.
All right.
Julio. Hold on. Let me put you on. Can you hear me?
I got you. This is your favorite uncle. What's going on, bro?
Man, nothing much. About to go meet up with my brother. What's happening with you?
Man, look. You want to go to the Cowboys, Julio? Or you want to stay in Atlanta?
Oh, man, nah, I'm out of there, man.
You
He's
out of
out. He's out of there.
there? Are you going to... Ideally, where would you like to go?
Right now, I want to win.
Okay. Well, don't go to Dallas. If you go to, you ain't winning in Dallas, Julio.
You already, man, listen, come on, man. You already know I know.
Okay.
Can you remind him we're on television
Ask
right
him
now?
why we wore the Dallas.
Listen. You know how people is, man, with all that going on with the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all that stuff like that.
Okay.
Man, I ain't never been on that. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. That's good enough. Julio, I'll talk to you later. Thanks for calling me back. We on.
Yeah, that was a really clear conversation of what I'm saying. What I would tell you is, here's my take on that. There is 0.0% chance he knew he was on a TV show that first 40 seconds.
I'm going to push back for one second on that.
There is no chance he knew he was on anything when he said, "I'm out of here." Then right after that, Skip goes, "You hear that? You hear that?" Everyone starts laughing. He then changes his tune of saying, like, "I just want to win, and you know all about this." He then realized he was on a show. There is no chance in that first time when he said, "You want to go to Dallas or you want to stay in Atlanta?" He goes, "No, I'm out of here." No chance he knew he was on their dumb show.
Okay, so I'll push back just a little bit on that. I don't think he was either, honestly, but he answered in like 3 rings. Like, what NFL guy? Remember, they had to call Trevor Lawrence 4 times to get him on the phone when he was the first pick in the NFL draft. And
he was driving.
He was going to be the first pick.
But he was driving. Nah, he was driving, dude. He was driving. You could hear him. He's like, "Hold on a second." He put on the Bluetooth. Like, he didn't get it on the first ring. He probably looked. He's like, "Oh, it's Shannon." Picks it up. The third ring is your reason? You think he knew he was on a TV show?
Yes, it is, because he actually answeed. I mean, most of those
Shannon
guys
Sharp
calls
you pick it up. No, I don't
really. Shannon Sharp is that's the line we're drawing. Shannon
absolutely
Sharp.
For these guys, absolutely. Shannon Sharp.
I like Shannon Sharp, but I don't know that, if Shannon Sharp called me and we were doing stuff, I'd be like, maybe I'll hit him back. So
I would hang up on your ass instantly. I'd be like, "Shannon, what's good? Yes, I want to go to the Cowboys. That's fine." No, I am all but certain after hearing that clip, he had no idea. Okay, let me counter back to you. You say, "Oh, he took 3 rings." He also put them on hold for 10 seconds to flip his phone over to a Bluetooth because he was driving.
2 seconds. It didn't take that long at all.
No, he's like, "Hold on a second." Like, but we're all sitting here. Then you hear it go because he's driving around. I would stake not my life, but a lot on that. He had no idea that he was live on a show. He just thought Shannon was calling him, and then he picked it up, and then he really toned down his answers. "Yeah, you know what that's about, blah, blah, blah." And Shannon caught on, and he's like, "Oh, I'll call you back, Julio." I am deadlocked into that, and that says a lot. By the way, he's also refers into in the interview where he says the picture. I don't know if you've seen it. A fan caught him at a mall, and he was wearing a Dallas Cowboys hoodie, and he was nice enough to take a picture with the fan, and this guy shares it online, and everybody ran with him wearing a Dallas Cowboys hoodie. That's the whole thing with it. So that's the picture he's talking about. But he affirms on that show, it doesn't even matter, by the way. It doesn't matter if he knew, he didn't know. He straight up says, "I'm out of there," and he's gone. And that's where we're at with the Julio Jones.
By the way, I tried to look to see if he said anything about it, and his tweets are protected. You have to, he has a Twitter, but you have to be accepted to see him. So don't know.
Yeah, you got to follow him now because everybody's hitting him up with that stuff. He's out of there, man. I saw a rumor because we talked about this on the radio show.
I'm not going to be 100% convinced, and we talked about this on the radio, so I'm not going to go too far into it.
What?
That he's going to get traded, and not that he I know he's requested to be traded and he wants to be traded, but they tried to get a first during the draft. That didn't happen. Now they're saying maybe they'll take a second. So who knows if no one's not if no one is willing to give a second to get him because his contract is enormous, then he ain't going to get dealt. He's going to be stuck there in Atlanta. So
I mean, I don't think you get to this point without knowing a way out. I don't think that exists. I mean, I get what you're saying, and you and I we're always in this state whenever we do this, where like there's something like this, and you always are kind of held back on it because of the player. And I'm like, no, he openly comes out, he's getting traded. Like this.
No, he should get traded. I'm just, it's harder to trade a guy after the draft. We've gone through this before, but I'm not 100% convinced. I do think he'll get traded. I even said that in my write-up for my rankings. So that's why I have Kyle Pitts so high. So,
okay. Well, I think he's getting traded. There was a rumor out there that the team that he had honed in on was the Patriots. The Falcons are apparently telling people that they don't want to trade him within the NFC. And on the radio this past weekend where we were doing our show, we went through some of the likely candidates. And I forget the Atlanta reporter that had put this out there, but they had put out, a host of teams. The 49ers were one because of Kyle Shanahan's connections, but there are easier connections in the AFC. And I think the two that people are locked in on that make the most sense are the New England Patriots and the Tennessee Titans. So, there's a couple other teams that can be involved in there. The Falcons apparently still to this day, I don't know where you saw the second round report. I think they're going to have to settle because they're still asking for first. They're saying, because they've got multiple suitors, that they're trying to request to get a first. We do not believe that's going to happen. This is not a repairable.
I think it's like any other negotiation. You ask for some more than you're willing to take, and then when they counter
PFF,
okay, that's fine.
PFF on when we were doing the radio show, they had put out like a trade simulator, whatever. They had put out a potential trade option where I believe it was to the Titans, and it was Julio and a 6 for a 2, a 3, and like a 5 or
a
something
conditional
like that.
Something. Yeah.
But they were all in this year's coming draft, but a 2 and
AJ
3
Brown, I think, retweeted that and said, I'll give up number 11 if Julio comes to play here. So
sure. Of course he would. So
he'll probably go to number 1, which would really annoy the Welsh. So.
And it would really annoy me, actually. That's going to be the really tough one. I mean, it's all the numbers are going to annoy me. I have to get over it, but like,
yeah, there's plenty of linebackers going to number 5 and stuff like that. Like, you're gonna hate it.
That's going to be it right there. That's
no kickers. No kickers are 99. They didn't do that. So
the linebackers at like number 9. That's going to bug me. That's going to be a bug one for sure. But I think Julio's gone. I think it looks like he's going to be gone. I think the best thing for this scenario, I think the best thing from a PR standpoint is to get this done. But that's not the best thing. But that's not the best thing from a contractual standpoint of getting assets back. That's not going to be the best thing for them possible. So this could drag out a little bit, but in my mind, regardless of it, Julio Jones is getting a new home, and it leads to bigger questions or bigger statements in it. Your love of Kyle Pitts, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, makes all but more sense. You have him crazy high in your rookie ranks. You had him at number 3, which people can check out. Makes him better for this year. Calvin Ridley was already a top 10 wide receiver, I think, for this coming year. That affirms it. I think it puts Russell Gage into a whole nother tier. That's one that we haven't been talking about.
He would honestly, Russell Gage would be the biggest mover of anyone.
Agreed. The biggest beneficiary of the Julio trade.
Yeah. I got Calvin at 7, by the way, among wide receivers. So
yeah, and I think that is the general space. When we were looking at it, I think Atlanta was one of the few teams with like 2 wide receivers in like the top 15. That's how that would end up looking for them. But it opens up space, and I think Russell Gage is probably the biggest beneficiary, because also in the entire trade, wherever Julio goes, Julio's just going to hurt his own value in someone else. I don't see a space like how many but follow me. How many places can he go where he can maintain the value of this high-end number 1? Now follow me. New England, yes. I mean, unfortunately, Cam Newton's your quarterback, so but
yeah, I think New England is actually one of the worst places he can end up.
Okay, so. But to me, that's one of the few spots he can go in and be the clear-cut number 1. He goes to Tennessee. I don't think that's him and AJ Brown fighting.
He's better than AJ Brown.
I
like AJ Brown.
But that hurts AJ Brown, and
it definitely does.
But it also hurts Julio because AJ
I don't think
Brown
it does.
Is there.
No, because Julio. Well, how Julio played next to Calvin Ridley last year.
Okay, but Tennessee
was
doesn't
really good.
But is Tennessee the same high flying passing offense that Atlanta is?
No,
they got
not,
Derrick Henry. He's going to pound it 35 times.
Okay, but I mean, one thing happens to Derrick Henry, and they go to we have to pass the ball a lot.
But that, I mean, you can't build that into like, oh, well, he's going to be not hurt because if this one thing happens. Okay, sure.
Here's what I can say is that wherever he goes, he's a top 10 wide receiver to me. It doesn't matter.
Okay,
unless he goes to Kansas City and he has to compete with Kelsey and Tyreek Hill,
which is a potential landing spot.
I mean, that would be. But even then, they don't have a firm running game. He's still probably a top 10 wideout. So there are very, very, very few places Julio ends up and he is the number 2 to a number 1. That's just it. See,
I'm not even saying him being a number 2 to a number 1. I'm saying he's just going to a spot which I doubt is going to be as pass heavy, and he's going to be a 1A to 1B type of situation. He doesn't have to supplant it.
No place is going to be as pass heavy, most likely, as Atlanta was last year, especially last year because the running back situation was terrible with Gurley there and nobody else, right? But wherever he goes, he's still going to get a lion's share of the targets because he's Julio Jones, right? I mean, he goes to Tennessee. He's the number 1 option behind Derrick Henry. It's Julio and number 2. In Atlanta, it's Julio. It's Calvin Ridley, it's Kyle Pitts. They have a decent amount of options.
Okay, but you're acting like Kyle Pitts is more of a threat than AJ Brown is. That's ridiculous. AJ Brown is a legitimate threat.
Number 1, it's not ridiculous, and number 2, so don't knock Kyle Pitts in front of me. Number 1, and number 2, AJ Brown. AJ Brown's great, but is he already Calvin Ridley? A lot of people want to put him there. I'm just not ready yet.
I mean, we're kind of arguing like hairs here a little bit. But Julio Jones has gotten 157 targets last year, 170 the year before, 148. When he gets that he could still be great, but he had 148 targets in 2017 for 1,400 yards, and he only had 3 touchdowns. The offense that he goes to, is he going to amass huge amounts of targets? Is it going to be a pass-heavy offense where, he has to get, when he gets over the 1,300 yard marker, that really benefits him because he doesn't get the touchdowns. Maybe he goes to a spot where he ups in touchdowns, but yards go down. I guess my only argument is he's 32 years old. He's older. He's going to a new offense. There's connections in other places. And I think there's a limited amount of teams that provide the offensive air power to continue for him to be a no doubt, no brainer top 10 pick or something.
I would
like
say
that
Minnesota and Tennessee are kind of comparable as far as running it goes, right? I mean, they both run the ball a ton, right?
Oh, sure.
So Justin Jefferson last year had 125 targets. Adam Thielen had 108. If he's somewhere in that range, I think he's going to be fine.
But he's still a top 10 receiver with 110 targets.
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, he
has never had under 110 targets where he's been worthwhile. The lowest he had in a full season is 16 games in 2012 where he had 129 targets, just under 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, which is a
last
monster
year. He averaged
Atlanta.
16. He only played 9 games because he was hurt, but he averaged 16 points per game. That's right in the range of AJ Brown was 17.2. DK Metcalf was just under 17. Justin Jefferson was just under 17 as well. Allen Robinson. So he's still in that top 10 range as long as he plays. So, you can't bake in the injury for stuff. The only reason I said the thing about Derrick Henry is because so many people are predicting him to get hurt because he went over that 375 carry marker.
But I get that. But you can't bake in your argument of why a guy is going to be good is because this could happen. Like you can't bake that in for Tennessee.
No, you can't.
If you just think AJ Brown is trash like you do, then
Julio
Jones is the best
I have AJ Brown ahead of both of them right now. If Julio gets traded to Tennessee, I'm going to have AJ Brown go below both of them because now I think Julio's
and you're not going to move
Tennessee.
Julio Jones down at all?
No, I'm going to move Julio up if he goes to Tennessee because I think Calvin Ridley and Julio are close enough to be those co-number ones that kind of eat into each other. I don't think it's that close with him and AJ Brown. And look, I like AJ Brown a lot. Like I said, right now, I've got Brown ahead of both of them because he's the clear number 1. Jonnu's gone. That Josh Reynolds is their second wideout right now. So Brown is going to get 180 targets right now. But if Julio goes there, then I think they're split, and I'm going to lean on Julio's side on that. So,
well, it's going to be an interesting conversation because I look at it that I don't really see any team that's being in conversation that makes him more.
And Julio's
valuable.
one of the guys that I marked as I have different than the consensus. So we'll
talk
on Julio.
We'll talk about that because like a firm disagreement I have is right now I would take Justin Jefferson over him because I don't see Julio Jones going to a spot where he's going to get 150 targets anywhere.
Now, I got them in the same tier. So Justin Jefferson's more than fair. So,
okay. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I would dump him. I think he would be at the bottom of this kind of second tier that you have.
Well, most people have him in the third tier. So why that's the big difference, really.
Well, that'll be one of your guys that you get to talk about. But I would put it at 95% he's getting traded. What do you put it at?
I put it at 65%.
Okay. Yeah. See, I
still think he's getting traded.
I just don't know how but you say you think he's getting traded, but you're just like, but he might not. Like,
yeah, he might not. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers is going to retire instead of play. Like he should be the guy that forces his way out. This ain't the NBA, dude. Like the NBA, you're forcing your way out, and that's just that. The NFL is not the NBA. The players don't control as much. So if the franchise just says, yeah, we're not trading you, period, end of story, you're kind of stuck.
I mean, they are, except that if they've made their money, they do control their future and they can just retire and they can just not play if they feel that hell-bent on it. And guess what? Players more than ever seem to be hell-bent and they seem to be pushing back in a collective way where you have three situations.
Rodgers at the age where he can retire. 32 is not
Watson's the
age.
one I don't. But Julio Jones, he could walk away if he is done with Atlanta. He could
Anyone
walk away.
in their 30s could walk away.
I don't think Watson can walk away.
Stranger things happen
outside of
I mean,
away. He might be dragged away.
Exactly.
That might be
in handcuffs.
So that might be his problem.
But yeah, I mean, with Julio, I just don't think that he controls enough to force his way out. I think they know he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to be there. He said on the show today, I'm out of there. So I do think he gets traded. I'm not as sold as it is 100% happening. It probably will happen.
I will make a bet with you if you'd like to make a bet. Because
I just said I think he gets traded.
But then you said 65%
is over 50%.
But then you also said
he's going to get traded. Probably.
You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You're like, yeah, I think he'll get traded, but like I'm not convinced he'll get traded.
Well, you're just like, well, he's gone. He's out of there. It's done.
He's gone.
It's not over. He's still on the team. If they couldn't trade him during the draft, it's really hard to trade him. His contract is enormous. Only a small percentage of teams can afford him. And do those teams want to give up the pick? I think someone in there, Julio's so good, someone in there is going to say, we are idiots if we don't give up a second round pick for him. We're stupid. So we're going to say no to a first. We're going to dance around it. And then when they finally come back and say a second, we're going to do it. But if no team says we have to have him, then, you have a small amount of teams that can afford him. One of those teams you got to have a dance partner, that's just my thought. I do think he gets traded. So I'm not going to bet you, but don't say I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. I do think he gets traded. It's just not a for sure 95% he's gone. That's all.
Okay. We'll move on to some other stuff. I mean, you literally said you're just like, he could get traded, but I just don't think it's for sure.
I said he'll probably get traded. Just not for sure.
I'm just saying, I think it is a 100% sure. You risk damaging the future relationship with one of the
don't victory lap me when he gets traded, because I'm saying he probably gets traded.
Won't even bring it up. We won't even talk about it. We'll be like, a player got traded to a team that possibly could have gotten moved, maybe or maybe not. That's what we'll do.
Let's do that.
This is one of the weirder ones, and I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on all these news because we got a lot of ranks to talk about. But Urban Meyer said that running back Travis Etienne is going to work as a wideout in camp, mostly wideout. And what school is that coming from? Because what is Urban Meyer's plan? And what do you think, just real quickly, the others will burn through. What do you think this does in your mind to Etienne's value coming into this year? Because I know it can create some could he qualify at wide receiver, and it can get some excitement going, but I don't know. That puts a lot of questions in my mind to what is their plan? Is this a Lev Bell situation, or is this a Dexter McCluster situation?
No, I think it's much more of a Lev Bell situation. I think they're just lining him up in the slot to get him used to playing off press and stuff like that, if they are going to want him to do that. I think, him and Robinson are going to be 1-2 punch for them. So I think you're going to get some big games from ETN. You're going to get some big games from Robinson, and it's going to be an annoying situation in his rookie year, but they just want him to be on the field most of the time. So they're looking to run him out of the slot on occasion, which is weird to me because Chark is so good out of the slot too. And Marvin Jones is so good out of the slot. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I would want him to get more used to running behind his offensive lineman, but I don't know, man. Urban Meyer has got some weird stuff going on there in Florida. I mean, obviously with the Tebow stuff, I think they could have used way more things than a running back with that 25th overall pick that they spent on ETN. So it's looking strange. It's either going to really work and Urban Meyer is going to be the talk of the town, or we might be looking at a Steve Wilkes situation where he coaches 1 year and then they bring in somebody else.
Yeah, I really don't know if we have the best gauge on how to value the Jaguars. And I don't think any of us are going to until we start to see in action because of this. When you made your ranks here, I'm curious, had you fully invested your rank? And you don't have to we're not going to give it away, but is ETN ranked knowing that he will work as a primary wide receiver, or is this from your initial?
No, because I don't believe that for 1 second, that he's going to be a primary wide receiver. I think he's going to be a running back. I think this was just this was in rookie camp. So I think during training camp and all that stuff, he's going to be a running back mainly. But this is kind of like how Washington drafted Antonio Gibson as a wide receiver last year. And then he played running back the whole year. You know what I mean? So, I have him and Robinson next to each other because it's going to be annoying and difficult. So in redraft, I don't think I'm going to have many shares of either of them.
These numbers you have, one cool thing about the sheet, if people want to check it out, because there's the overall and then there's the positional and it's got stats. These are last year's stats plus for rookies as college, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. He was targeted 60 times in 12 games in college for 48 catches, 588 yards and 2 touchdowns, which are really impressive, by the way, like little over 12 yards per catch. Where do you see that number? By the way, it mirrors James Robinson's 60 targets for 49 catches, but only 344 yards in 14 games last year. Where do you think ETN sits as far as targets and catches? If you had to I think it's probably
pretty close to what it is, probably, because once again,
even if he's working out at wideout. So you really don't believe, even though this came from the coach, you don't believe if you only believe.
I'll tell you
targets.
Right now, he will not line up as a wide receiver more times than he's in the backfield. 100%.
Okay.
Without a doubt in my mind. I think all they wanted him to do was to learn how to run out of the slot because his pass catching in college is something that he built. He built and he got really good this year. He still has some drop issues for sure. But I mean, and this was 48 catches playing, Travis Etienne didn't play to the end of the game most of the time for Clemson. They were blowing people out. So this is in 3 quarters in most games. So dude can catch the ball for sure. Yeah. And he's going to be that third down back for them for a little bit, but he's too good of a running back. He was drafted as a running back. He's a tool and he's a piece for them to use. So
that's not nice. You just called him a tool. Why?
I think he's going to have something
like Eckler.
Like 130 carries and like 60 catches, something like that, or 60 targets. I mean, and however many catches will come off that. So I think that's something. I think Eckler's a pretty good comp. Reggie Bush is the comp I use for him.
Yeah.
I think that's what he is. So he's going to catch a decent amount of footballs, but he's going to carry the ball way more.
That's an interesting take on it. It leaves him for you kind of as a flex option, and it'll be something to monitor. It was kind of a big statement. The other, I'm going to just burn through them and any little notes you want to go so we can talk about the ranks. But the other important notes is Anthony Lynn with the Lions referred to Jamal Williams as a classic A back, which is not great for Deandre Swift, something we can have in future conversations. Bruce Arians said that Fournette and Jones will continue to split time this coming year, which is for all of us. Ugh. Giants coach Joe Judge said that Kadarius Toney will be used in multiple roles. So in my eyes, that's never a great sign. They're just like, let's get him around and try to get the ball to him. Vic Fangio said that the team is going to utilize all 3 of their running backs in 2021, which I think opens up a really, really big, interesting debate between Javonte and a guy like Etienne. But I feel like when I feel like I can feel in the back of my neck that I read that statement and Bogman goes, I don't believe a word of it. It's Javonte Williams and it's nobody else, right?
No, That's not exactly right, but I have Williams and Etienne ranked really close and in the same tier.
But I'm saying you don't believe a word of it because Williams is the number one there and the only guy to. I'm not referring to Etienne. I'm saying the coach says we're going to use all three backs, and you say I don't believe one word of it. It's Williams because he's the best back, and you don't draft a running back that high without using him.
Not exactly. No.
No.
No. Williams is marked on here too, so we'll talk about him.
Okay. Patriots have had internal. Oh yeah, that was a Julio Jones one. Patriots have talked about it, and Julio wants to go there. I totally agree. If there's one thing we can agree on with Julio Jones, if he goes to New England, so cool, dude, that you're the number one, but you're the number one with 6 targets a game at best, if possible. That you're going to have to make happen because Cam Newton is. It's like throwing little Nerf balls. Joe Burrow is all systems go for week 1. Thank you very much. And the Giants, coming back to the Giants here, signed Kelvin Benjamin as a tight end.
He's back. Now all the Popeyes ads, because as soon as he signed, everybody wanted to play that booger clip of him saying, he's a wide receiver, but he's a Popeyes biscuit away from being a tight end, and now he comes back and signs as a
Popeyes should immediately sign him to a deal.
Yeah, they should 100%.
If they free marketing dollars to you, Popeyes, you do that instantly, and you play those ads in New York, and you go viral when you do so. You go viral in the football community. All right, those are some news and notes. Let's get down to brass tacks here. We have got Bogman's ranks, their PPR. We're not going to go all through them. You can do that at Patreon by signing up and supporting your boy who put all this hard work into it. What we are going to do is we're going to look at the big differences that have been figured out via the Fantasy Pros kind of consensus ranks versus Bogman's. We'll tell you where things differ, and we'll do it right after this.
The In This League Podcast Network.
PPR ranks, Bogman, you put a lot of hard work into these, and it's a very good-looking sheet, too, if you guys want to check it out. One of my favorite things that you and I have kind of adopted since we've been doing this is when you go look at the overall, I just love me a good color-coded by position. I love to look at an overall and just easily be able to see positions throughout. And if you guys check out the PPR ranks, I'm scrolling down and it's going past the 200s, and then you can look positionally as well if you want to really dig deep into where Bogman's got the PPR stuff. And mine will be out in the coming months, but Bogman's the guy that you want to be paying attention to in the offseason to get some of your early prep. So let's start with quarterbacks, Bogman. I know how to put a lot of work into this, and the number one that jumps out here is something that I brought up in one of our most recent episodes was my willingness to come back in on Lamar if Lamar was coming at a deal. Lamar is not coming at a deal, even in Fantasy Pros world. Fantasy Pros, he comes in as the number 4 quarterback, which isn't that big of a deal. Maybe if he's far down the list, okay, I guess I'll give you that argument. But for Mr. Scott Bogman, Lamar is back as a top 2 quarterback after that atrocious year of under 3,000 yards passing. He did rush for over 1,000. It's not atrocious. It's atrocious based on where you paid for him. I should clarify that because it was still a fine year. He did score near the bottom of QB1s if you really go through the whole scoring system, but the rushing touchdowns help. So talk to me about that. You just went all back in Lamar when there are great other options. Josh Allen, phenomenal. Dak Prescott, I think, makes an argument for one of the top spots, maybe one of the best values. Kyler Murray's in there. What got Lamar at number 2 as one of your biggest quarterback differences from Fantasy Pros?
Well, I think what we're all forgetting is just how good his 2019 was, right? And I think we all expected last year he was going too high. I think we all kind of said that, right? And just quarterbacks overall, I think last year the top end was going too high. This year, I think it's a little different. I think there's 2 big tiers and then everybody else after that. But let's just look back at 2019 for 1 second, which was a more normal year than 2020 was, of course. And let's just see the difference in points per game between number 1, Lamar Jackson at 32.51 versus number 2, Matt Stafford at 25.57. We're talking about a touchdown difference, and it's just so huge for him. Plus, the Ravens are trying to add pieces for him to throw to. They drafted Devin Duvernay last year. They spent a first-round pick on Rashad Bateman this year. Mark Andrews was banged up all year last year. Marquis Brown, I think, was banged up a little bit as well.
Julio's been brought up in the Baltimore conversation as well.
Oh man, I wouldn't like that for Julio because they don't throw the ball enough. But I would love that for Lamar. I'll tell you that much.
That's what I'm saying. I wasn't even thinking Julio. I was thinking like more weapons for Lamar.
But right, so Lamar last season averaged, what was it, 25? I'm not looking at it.
25.52. He averaged. Here's my only problem with it. If you go into the per game, is he averaged like a quarter of a point more than Ryan Tannehill.
Okay, but here's this from the year before. Lamar Jackson averaged 32.51. The next highest was 25.57. So that 25.52 would have landed him at third the year before. We just had more quarterbacks scoring more last year.
And he was 10 last year, by the way. He would have averaged, if you include even Dak from a per game standpoint, if I'm doing the math correctly, he would have come in as the 10th highest quarterback scorer last year.
And don't forget about all the screwiness that the Ravens had. Remember, they had COVID issues a bunch of times.
Yeah, that's true.
That Thanksgiving game was moved back to Wednesday the week after that, and I had to scramble to get the channel because NBC and DirecTV were fighting, right? So I just think that if you're looking at in this tier of the upper echelon quarterbacks, Lamar is still going to be my number 2, and it's not. I love Josh Allen, but his potential to outscore everyone is there. And I think him and Mahomes are the only two that really hold that.
Yeah, and I'm not in a big disagreement, and we don't have to keep spending on this. The overarching thing for me ultimately is going to be of who is the cheapest in what I consider a tier. You and Fantasy Pros don't agree on a tier, which is interesting. Their top tier is Mahomes, Allen, and Murray. If that's super interesting, that's their tier 1. You have a top 5 tier that people can check out and go support Bogman to see all of them. And that kind of changes the difference. So like, I kind of agree with you a little bit, though. I might be a little bit more stringent in that, like, I might legit just say Mahomes is his own tier. I know we're not doing that here,
That's
but
fine.
I think we should, because like, if the tier, they've got to be in the same general vicinity. No one's in the vicinity of Mahomes, and no one challenges.
You just scroll
Mahomes.
back 1 year though, and Lamar averaged 3 more points per game than Mahomes did last year, and Mahomes was the leading scorer. So,
I think all your arguments are good. I think a bounce back I'm in for. He also is such a safe floor for how he runs.
Yeah.
It's just I want to pay the cheaper price, and if I'm paying the number 2 quarterback price, which you're not necessarily, if he's coming in at 4-3, it's something to monitor, but that is a big difference. Here's another one. Desean Watson. What in God's name do you do with Desean Watson, who still wants to be traded? He said it as of we're recording this on Monday. He still expects to be traded. He's still not going to show up to camps. He thinks he's going to get out of all this mess clean. I don't know about that. He is buried on Fantasy Pros, down at 25. You are hedging a little bit because I think if he would, but the only reason I say this is because now you'll correct me here.
Yeah.
I believe if he were cleared of everything, he would not be 10 for you. So I feel like you're playing both sides, but you might correct me and say, no, if he's cleared, he would be 10. And that would answer that. Because I don't think you can hedge him.
No, I think he would be close to 10. I might bump him up a little bit.
Okay.
But he would be close to 10. This ranking for me is more or less.
Tough one. I don't know how you do it.
I just don't know what to do with him. You know,
I feel like I would have been like the Fantasy Pros people, and I would have said,
just bury him.
I have to do one. I have to say I'm in that he'll play, or I'm out. I cannot play the middle. I have to be confident about it because this is an impossible.
This is.
I think I might be out.
He would be in this tier 100% because he's lost some wide receivers. The running game looks weird. They're going to, he has a Ravens coaching staff coming in. So I think they're going to run the ball a lot, which is why they loaded up on running backs too. Yeah. So I think his overall rank is going to come down for me if he ends up playing in Houston and playing 17 games for Houston. I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't want to move him around until I know how long he's suspended. Is it a month? Is it 2 months? Is it the year? Is he just out of the league? Like, what is going on with him? And honestly, we can say that for Aaron Rodgers too, because I think there are some people that are burying Aaron Rodgers. And, the closer it gets to the season without these guys showing up and being there, the lower they're going to fall in my ranking.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right now, I feel like they're both going to play, but I just don't know. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's too absolutely polar opposite situations, though. Like Aaron Rodgers controls his own fate. The law might control Desean Watson. So that's why I might be like out on Watson until I'm told otherwise. Because it's what's the worth of investment? Like,
I wouldn't be drafting him right now.
But see, that's why I would take him off. Like in my eyes, if I'm at a 12 team, maybe I'm take the risk and take him at 12 and then I piggyback him. Okay, maybe that's a scenario. No other scenario am I doing it. Where Rodgers, I do think you have to build in some of the concern, but I'm more convicted that he is going to play. So, like, I'm with you.
You said he was guaranteed out of Green Bay too. Are you still on that?
Oh yeah, well, he's out of Green Bay in that he will not play for Green Bay, or he's going to get moved. I still think he's going to get moved. I don't think it's repairable. It does not seem to be repairable. They're publicly trashing each other. I think that one's got to go. But to the point that I do not think Aaron Rodgers plays for the Green Bay Packers. So that is the concern. So to your point, I would just be out on Watson altogether. As Rodgers doesn't have like a confirmed thing, I would be like you. I'd be slowly moving him down as we get closer and closer because the risk is picking up, which I don't like. Couple of the quarterbacks, Pogs. Rookie, Joe Burrow. You are not the high guy on Burrow this year, which is hilarious that you were all in on him last year, rightfully so. You've got him at 17 and Fantasy Pros has him at 11. I'm going to throw the other two quarterbacks in here. Daniel Jones, you are out on, who you have been a Danny Dimes guy. He's 19 on Fantasy Pros. You have him at 28. And Justin Fields, the rookie, people are buying in as a QB2 essentially in Superflex if you're in like a 12 team or dual quarterback at 23. You have him at 34. So you are out-ish comparative to the market on Burrow, Jones, and Fields.
Yeah, Burrow, look, and I said this in my write-up on Patreon, I just want to see him get out there and throw the ball with his team. Like the more check marks he hits, the higher he's going to come up for me. I don't know if I'm still going to have him as a QB1. We'll see. I don't think I'm going to. So for me, he in a 12-man league, he's a QB2, and I'm not going to mess with him too much. So just that the offensive line is still rough. There's just too much there. Danny Dimes got all the new toys, got Kenny Galladay, added Kadarius Toney, Saquon is back healthy, all that great stuff. But come on, this guy is a year away from being an afterthought to everybody. If he plays bad this year, he's gone. The Giants are going to be drafting another quarterback. So I don't know how much patience they're going to have for him. If he's not good the first month in New York, he might be burned at the stake, dude. So I'm not doing it. And then Justin Fields is simply about, they're still saying Andy Dalton. And I don't think, once again, I don't think you can keep your job with Andy Dalton as your QB1 if you're Matt Nagy, right? So I think Justin Fields is going to take over earlier rather than later. But if they commit to Andy and he plays well, if they're 3-1 to start the season, how do you yank him? How do you yank him for Fields? You got to keep winning games, and it's still until he starts losing games. So I just don't know how many games Fields is going to play. Like if something happened with Andy Dalton, I would skyrocket Justin Fields, especially in fantasy. I think he his running ability is going to make him one of the better fantasy quarterbacks moving forward. Just for this year in his rookie season, I don't know how much he's going to play, so I don't really want to draft him.
Yeah, I find it interesting because there's an upside play, but like then I look on Fantasy Pros and I see Trey Lance buried down at 32, but Jimmy Garoppolo's at 33. So that's people putting their hands up and going like, I don't know what to do. But Trey Lance has as much upside, I think, as Fields does, because Trey Lance is going to run. He has more weapons. He can be protected a little bit more. Like if you're going to go down that road and you want to play the upside, I'd actually rather play, I think, a 49ers and Trey Lance. But guess what? I don't want to play either one of those. If I'm truly looking at this as like a quarterback 2 range.
If Rodgers gets traded, I think I'd rather have Jordan Love than both of them.
I completely agree with that as well. That should be another one where he should be up a little bit more. And that's why I wouldn't deal with that territory. All right, over to the running backs. Now, this one doesn't have a huge like statistical difference, but we're talking about tiers, where Bogman is back in. This is going to make the Cowboy fans so excited. Bogman is in on Zeke and has him at number 5, where Fantasy Pros, those peeps, have him at number 6 in PPR, and you have a tier difference between these two. Again, I would slightly argue in that, like, I don't think Elliott and McCaffrey are interchangeable, so Elliott would not be in the same tier as a guy like McCaffrey. But I get what you're doing. You have a tier of 5 and it ends with Elliott. So I guess the real big thing here to go through is that you view Elliott not only in a higher rank, but a higher tier, I think, than the rest of the peoples.
Yeah, and Zeke is not only my number 5 running back, he's my number 5 player. So
yeah, and I was just about to look. He is number 8 on PPR on Fantasy Pros. So number 5 overall player. He's number 8 for Fantasy Pros.
And three players isn't a big difference as far as spot goes, but
the first round,
first half of the first round versus back half.
No, I'd argue. I think you're planting flag bogs.
And I am. Zeke is still my guy, right? And look, Dak was gone. They were bad on defense, so they had to play catch up with Andy Dalton a bunch. So I think the offense is just different with Dak there. And I know Zeke was having some issues when Dak was playing as well, but I think he's going to come into camp more focused. 2020, once again, 2020 was a weird year. We didn't get preseason. We didn't get training camp. We didn't get a lot of that stuff. So people weren't on Zeke in his conditioning, which I don't think was an issue, but I think it's going to be more serious this year. It's going to be buckled down, especially coming off that bad year. I think he wants to prove to himself and everybody else. I think he's keeping receipts and he wants to shut people up. So
are you not worried about Tony Pollard? I mean,
Tony Pollard's great,
but really ending the season, Tony Pollard had 8 or more carries in 4 of the final 5 games, which I know that might not sound like a ton, but that is a significant amount. He also had 3 different games this season, 2 coming in the final 4 weeks where he was over double-digit carries, that Tony Pollard doesn't eat just a tiny bit. Almost like the argument you can make about McCaffrey, where people are like, well, McCaffrey, they need to have a little bit of breakup, just so he doesn't have this full workload. Do you worry that Pollard is like a change of pace punch might get a little bit more run and just take Zeke's upside, maybe vultures a little bit touchdowns, just takes that off a little bit?
I love Pollard, and I kind of hope that happens to keep Zeke healthy, and it probably should, knowing that we're adding an extra game week 17.
So you think it makes him better? You think it makes Zeke better to
it makes him more fresh? Yeah,
gotcha.
Exactly. Gotcha. So he doesn't have to take 35 carries. He could take 25 and do the same stuff. And I think once you're at the goal line, there's very few guys that are as good as Zeke. So he's still gonna get those carries.
The only one I want to ask, because we're focused on the big ones. We'll burn through a couple more running backs and stuff. But the only one that I think it jumps out, because I don't really disagree with anything that you're saying, and I trust how you value a lot of these guys. The only one that it stands out is that you have Elliott above a Henry, and you have them in separate tiers. The only thing I can think of, and with all the questions with Elliott, has to be Elliott's propensity to catch the ball. But you have to fully believe back in Elliott, and you must be carrying some concern that this is the year that Henry comes down, because I don't see how you tier them differently.
I don't really have. Here's the thing. I don't think that Derrick Henry is going to score 17 touchdowns again, right? I think the touchdown, we've seen it so many times go up and down and up and down, and that was a big part of his game last year, was the 17 scores. Yeah. So
impossible to be able to repredict people.
Right.
Touchdowns are impossible to project. That's what
he could, but if I thought he's going to score 17 touchdowns, he would have to be my number 1. So I don't think he's that guy. And look at the targets. Zeke had 71 targets last year on a team with Cooper, with Gallup, with Lamb, so getting that many targets in that offense was big. I know it's probably a lot of Dalton and his pop gun arm and all that stuff, but I still think he's dangerous. So
if I'm reading this correctly, I think that was the 3rd most targets to a running back, a registered running back of anybody. Only behind number 1 was JD McKissick, which blows everybody's mind still, and Alvin Kamara. Obviously, you would have seen McCaffrey be up there had he played enough games, but that looks like it's number 2 in targets went to Ezekiel Elliott. So
yeah. So the guy, it's PPR. The guy just catches the ball so much. So that's what it is for me. And the touchdowns for Henry, I still love Henry.
The other one that jumps up here is you seem to have moved off of Austin Eckler. He's the number 8 in PPR for Fantasy Pros, but you've moved him down to 11, just barely an RB1 in the PPR format. What happened with Eckler?
Yeah, I don't understand why, last year when everyone was off Eckler, but the dude's coming off playing 10 games. Is this everyone is excited about the offense with the Chargers and Justin Herbert and potentially getting better? Is this about Eckler staying healthy? Look, I still have him as a RB1 in PPR. I'm just not going to raise him a crazy amount because he catches so many balls. It's a huge part of his game and everything, but they have actively tried to put someone behind him with Kelly and Justin Jackson and now Roundtree here. So he's still the main guy to me, but he's just not a upper tier potential running back to me. So
I mean, full season
he in tier 3 for me.
Yeah, full season he project based off of last year, only played 10 games, and off a 17-game season, you would be looking at him just north of like just south of 90 catches based on what he did last year. And think about all these running backs. So you would be a guy
16.5 points per game. Chubb, Jones, Taylor, Henry, all those guys scored more than him per game. Joe Mixon averaged more points per him.
But you also have to admit, like, he is a positive touchdown regression type of guy. Like, he had 3 touchdowns last year. Like, that's not going to be Eckler. Like, that team is going to score a little bit better. He's going to be involved more. Like, that's if there's a positive touchdown regression guy, that's got to be Austin Eckler. I'm not like, it's not crazy arguing here, but
no, I love that I love because I poke holes and you poke them back. I love this. So my thing with him is he a positive regression, touchdown regression guy? Because he's not a goal line back. And that might be why they're bringing in Jackson and Kelly and Roundtree, bigger guys to do that job, number one. And, Balaj was there and he did a lot of that goal line work last year too. So he's in Pittsburgh now, Balaj is. But and he got hurt. And when those small guys start getting hurt, you start to get a little worried. So, I
mean, it's a fair point, except like to what degree is a better argument to like positive touchdown regression? He had 11 touchdowns in 2019. He had 6 the year before that, and then he had 5 the year before that. So this is his lowest touchdown total in any given season he's ever had. But
I think he does score more touchdowns, but does he get as many touches? They're adding an extra game. I think we're going to see this with a lot of teams be annoying with these running backs. And I think Eckler is one of those guys because he's not that between the tackles thumper. I think he may lose just a touch. So, I don't have him low. He's still in our
no, you don't.
I still love him, but I think 8 is just I don't see where I can move him up. I just don't see it at all.
Well, I mean, let me give you these 3 guys. One of the guys I think is a place you possibly could. You have Naji Harris at 10 above Austin Eckler, where Fantasy Pros has him at 17. I'm going to throw a couple others here that I think are in this tier. Cam Akers, or tier-ish area. Cam Akers is a guy that comes in at 11 on Fantasy Pros, where you have Eckler. You have him at 15. And then I'm going to throw this guy in because I think you are dead on with him. Deandre Swift people should be concerned about. He had all the exciting kind of buzz you would think about him, but Williams coming in really screws him. Fantasy Pros rankers have him at 14. You have him at 19. So you don't have to compare all of them, but I'm saying is Fantasy Pros has Akers where you have Eckler, and you jumped Naji Harris over Eckler. So that's kind of a range of running back that I just think Eckler is just significantly better than. He's a tier better than all those guys, though I get where you're going with the Harris thing and how much Pittsburgh just loves to commit.
Tomlin loves to have one back, and Najee's a guy that can absolutely do it. And he is one of the better receiving running backs I've ever seen come out of college. So he is on the Lev Bell level as far as that goes. So he can already run routes as a wide receiver and all that stuff. A little braggadocious about it when reporters have been asking him about it in Pittsburgh, but I think he can move past a lot of those guys. So for me, I just don't see where I can move Eckler ahead of those guys. I'm not as high on Cam Akers. I get it. I just think they're going to sprinkle in Henderson a little bit more than we expect. And Deandre Swift, after the stuff that Anthony Lynn said, Detroit's going to have to run the ball because they have no wide receivers. So I think we're going to see a healthy dose of both Swift and Jamal Williams. And Swift is going to churn up those garbage yards, right? When they're losing and they have to have a back catch the ball and all that stuff. Jared Goff's going to be throwing plenty of dump offs to him. So I still do like DeAndre Swift, but he's got to come down a little bit. That offense is going to be
has to come down a little bit on.
And Jamal Williams is going to get used a decent amount.
In deeper leagues, they're essentially saying Swift can still be drafted as a number 1 running back. And I wouldn't do it. Like, I look at guys that I don't know where let me look at Fantasy Pros real quick, because I see some guys you have in there that you put above him. And I'm just like, yeah, complete agreement. I take J.K. Dobbins, even though they're kind of in a share. I'm going to take him over here. Let me get back to running back here. I want to see all the players that they've got right behind. So they have got Swift at 14. Here are some players they have behind Swift. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'll take Helaire in all of his inconsistency. Naji Harris.
I think I'm high on Helaire this year.
Which is hilarious. Hilarious. Najee Harris. I'll take Harris over Swift. Miles Sanders. I'm still going to go Sanders. J.K. Dobbins. I'm still going to go Dobbins. And then now Swift now belongs in this questionable territory that they've got of guys like Josh Jacobs. They brought in another guy, maybe Myles Gaskin and stuff like that. Like the way that the rankers seem to be all in on Swift, I'm concerned with the comments and how they brought in Jamal Williams.
I was probably there on Swift until Anthony Lynn made these comments. And I'm not I don't like to react to news like that. But when you hear an A back versus a B back, it means that and it's also not what Anthony Lynn had in LA. He had Eckler and nobody, so he had to use Eckler. I think this is more prime of what he wants, a big back and a smaller back.
Just a couple. I'm going to just throw out some guys that you are higher on than the Fantasy Pros rankers. Mike Davis, you've got at 24 as a RB2 over there, which is barely like a flex. Javonte Williams, you've got at 27 to 44 on pros. Jamal Williams, you've got about 11 spots higher. And Tevin Coleman and Damian Williams, two other guys are lower, much lower, but you are significantly higher on. And a couple guys lower that you are on than Fantasy Pros are Damian Harris, where you have him at 45, where Fantasy Pros has him right as a flex startable running back at 34, and Tariq Cohen, which they've got at 39. You're all out at 56. So any of those guys want to highlight?
Too many running backs in Chicago. They got Damian Williams. They got Tariq Cohen. I'm lower on David Montgomery than most people are, and you guys all know I love Montgomery. So I don't know what the hell Nagy's going to end up doing at running back. So I don't really want to mess with it too much. I don't want to mess with Jets running backs, but Coleman is the veteran, probably the best shot. Salah's bringing him over from San Francisco too. So I think he is the favorite to start the year as the lead back. I think Carter will get it eventually, but we'll see. The rest of these guys, I mean, Mike Davis, he's all Atlanta has.
I like the Mike Davis. I love the Mike Davis
He's all Atlanta has. That's it. They don't have anybody behind him.
And his legs.
Javian Hawkins, him and in those thighs, and
big old thighs, man.
This ain't a reaction to the thighs pick. I can guarantee you guys that.
What's bigger? Williams, what's bigger right now, his thighs or my head or your head?
That's a
I think his thighs. We
yeah,
got big
probably
heads.
his thighs. So, but
his thighs wear a size 8 hat for sure.
I think my Zeus head is bigger than his thighs, but that's it. The one that you drew and showed.
Yeah, I got it right there.
Javonte Williams is obviously the big one here, and we kind of I passed it over in the beginning to talk about it here. I don't see it as Javonte Williams is a number one. Get the F out of here with everybody else. All that stuff. I'm not that way on this. I think that this is a kind of like a poor man's Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, where Williams is the A back and Gordon is the B back, right? Gordon is the receiving guy. He catches the ball out of the backfield so well. So I think that is why. And I know they said they're going to mix Mike Boone in there. I don't think they are. So I do think it's a get out of here with that. I think it's Williams and Gordon. I think they're the, like I said, the poor man's version of Chubb and Hunt, but Williams is the lead back there. So I don't have him as an RB2, but I think he's going to be great as an RB3, especially later in the year.
Let's go take a little look at the pass catchers.
The In This League Podcast Network.
Number one on Bogman's list, I think this is going to be a highly debated and contested one all offseason. And I kind of know where Bogman's at with this one, though. If there is a sport, the NFL, you can be on the top of the mountain and just falling on a free fall off. It is this sport where I can tell you don't want to give up on this guy who has climbed the mountain many times before, where a lot of other rankers are. You have Michael Thomas at number 4 on your PPR wide receivers, where the Fantasy Pros rankers have decided, I'm going to go guys like Calvin Ridley, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, all that. And Michael Thomas is number 8. Now he's still tier 2. He's kind of middle of the pack. They've got some interesting debates as far as like guys that are right between him, like Justin Jefferson, nowhere close, Julio Jones. But Michael Thomas, you are clearly all back in for, and so much so, Boggs, in a 16-team league, he's a number 1 overall pick to you. I'm just creating a story out of that. I thought it might be a first round.
Welsh is like, what can I make up for Bogg and yell at me about now?
No, I was just trying to build a story. So technically, let's do it more realistic. He's not a first rounder, but he's borderline second round. So talk to me about Thomas. Like, you're just back in on Thomas. You're giving the benefit of the doubt, even though Breeze is not around.
We did this crap last year with DeAndre Hopkins, right? Everyone was lower on Hopkins, moving away from Watson and going to Arizona. Why? Because Kyler Murray's the quarterback and not Watson. Well, guess what? They passed the ball an S-ton in Arizona, and it worked. Same thing here. Michael Thomas's best games were not with Drew Brees. They were with Taysom Hill. So
that is a really, really interesting point right there.
So even if Taysom Hill is the quarterback, Michael Thomas is still one of the best. And also, let's not forget this factor that Michael Thomas got hurt week 1. He rolled his ankle, high ankle sprain, week 1, missed a ton of time, came back, clearly wasn't the same guy, didn't end the year out either. The ankle bothered him all year long. So knowing this guy was far and away the number 1 going into last year, how can you have him much lower than 4? There's no way I'm going to put A.J. Brown ahead of him. I love A.J. Brown. I'm not going to put him ahead of the guy that has the single season catch record, and he's not old, coming off a weird year overall in 2020, a year without his number 1 quarterback, and a year where he got hurt in week 1. So I don't understand the logic of having Michael Thomas this low. Did he lose everything? He lost everything, and now he's barely a top 10 wide receiver. I think it's absurd. So Michael Thomas is still going to be my number 4, and it's not really close. I almost put him in that top tier. I don't think he can because of the quarterback situation, but I would love to see what he does with Jameis. Jameis will pepper him with targets.
I don't disagree.
And they didn't add anybody else there.
But see, that's my problem, though, is I would like to see more options to spread the field out. Like, obviously, there's a run game situation.
We'll get to that in tight ends.
Yeah. There's a run game situation that New Orleans has where, like, Alvin Kamara kind of spreads the field out a little bit more, and he can play the pseudo wideout and stuff. But I would just have liked one more good wide receiver, like they had with Sanders for a bit, to spread the field out, so teams can't be like
without those guys too.
No, I know that. Yeah. It's a comfort level thing. If you're talking about floor, like Michael Thomas has a good ceiling, but is the ceiling as high when Drew Brees isn't there? It can be argued. He had his best games last little bit without Brees. That could be argued. But at the same time, if you've got Taysom Hill in there, or you got Jameis Winston, you may have teams being like, you're going to beat us on the ground, or you're going to have to beat us without Michael Thomas. And that might lead to an uptick in Alvin Kamara. And it just could be the tier change from Thomas being a top 5 wide receiver to being like a pseudo wide receiver 1. And I'm not sure that's really worth arguing at the end of the day. We all get caught into like, oh, this guy's number 4 and this is the 6th wide receiver. It's like, well, if you return first round value.
Yeah, he's more likely to me to be the number 1 wide receiver than he is a number 2 wide receiver, like past the top 12.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like, if you draft Justin Jefferson as the number 5 wide receiver and he returns wide receiver 1 value, okay, you're fine. If you draft Michael Thomas as the 5th or 6th wide receiver and he returns wide receiver value, first round value, that's fine. But when you start taking guys in the top 1 or 2 overall and they are the back end of the first round value, I think that's a difference. Or to what you said, you draft a guy in the first round and they return wide receiver 2 value. It's not about 2 or 3 spots. It's, I think, about 2 real change in tiers or the number 1 overall value. So I buy that one. Julio Jones, like we talked about, Bogman's got him at 9, Fantasy Pros at 13. I don't think we said that when we were going through this, or maybe you did mention it, but 13, not a wide receiver 1 right now in Atlanta. And I'm not sure it changes where he goes. We'll have to see. But you are tier difference. You're diametrically different on the world than Julio Jones right now.
He's still a really, really good wide receiver. I'd love to see him be a crisp, clear number 1 somewhere else. I think it would improve his value in most places, not every place, New England, but most places. I think his value ticks up. So but honestly, I don't know if I can move him much higher, but I really don't know. New England, maybe I move him a little lower. So I think he's probably going to be stuck at 9 for me.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I see downside with where you have him. I don't see any upside anymore outside of scenarios that are out of our control that can happen. Like if he were to trade to Kansas City and then Tyreek Hill were to tear his ACL, Julio Jones would be a top 3 overall wide receiver.
I mean, he still might be. If he goes to Kansas City, that's kind of my thought process is wherever he goes, Kansas City, he's probably the number 3 option behind Hill and Kelsey, but pretty much everywhere else, he's 1, maybe 2 in some scenarios.
Antonio Brown, Bogman is back. Antonio Brown, this is hilarious. I wish you would have just went back to where you were last year and called him a top 10 wide receiver, but you've got him at 32 where this is really interesting. Everybody else is out at 48. I wonder if they just haven't caught back up to him because he hasn't signed and because he's got to pass the physical or the physical stuff. Because you have him at 32, they have him at 48. He is a clear option for Tom Brady if he is on that team. So I don't understand the 48 at all, outside of people just being like, well, physical.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it either. You know,
That's
there
weird.
were plenty. There were teams that did it with 3 wide receivers last year. The Steelers and Cowboys both did it. Cincinnati's going to be doing it when they add Chase this year. They're all going to hold value. So I think that he's still a top 3 wide receiver if he's going to play. He's got to pass that physical first.
Do you think it's the physical that's holding back? Because I just don't understand. Like,
I don't. That's what would hold me back. But I think most people just, he's kind of out of sight, out of mind. He went crazy for a year, and people take him out of that. But he's still really, really good. So for me, it's hard to have him even this low.
Yeah, I'm not fully. I just don't understand it completely. Like, outside of, I know there's a ton of targets, but like, he played well and he got a bulk of targets from Brady. So
yeah, look, the Fantasy Pros list real quick. I mean, who are the guys like just ahead of him? Is it? Do you have it pulled up?
Yeah, I have it up. What number was he again? Did I say
48?
48. Okay, so 48. Yeah, there's Antonio Brown. So who do you want to know? The guys below or
just above him?
You've got Marvin Jones in Jacksonville.
Come on, man.
No way. Michael Pittman. F off.
Okay, who's the first one that you see moving ahead of him that is a competition in your eyes, where you go, okay, I can see maybe having this guy ahead of AB?
40, Devontae Parker.
Okay, even with Waddle there?
Yeah.
That's the next guy I'm high on as well.
Okay, but but I just want to say, here's the argument. Like, we could argue
sure.
Antonio Brown is still like the 3rd or 4th option in that place, but they just have a lot. So I'm saying Devontae Parker, the number 2 receiving option, number
Absolutely.
1.
Yeah.
I'd say Parker. I mean, they got Curtis Samuel, Jarvis Landry above him.
Curtis Samuel?
I don't know. Debo is in there above. It's a really rough.
Debo's okay. He could be the
players.
number 1 option behind.
I just think
probably 2 behind Kittle.
But Brown is at the bottom of their tier 6. Their tier 5 is Juju down to Curtis Samuel. All of these players, like, you telling me that Antonio Brown can't be more valuable than DJ Chark, who they have at 30? I don't know. I don't buy all of it. I just
they
think
didn't add to the running game. It's going to be the same crap that it was last year between Fournette and Jones. So
it's a weird.
He's just going to get better with Brady, I think.
You have 2 of the rookies, like you said, Jamar Chase. You have at 33, right behind Antonio Brown. They have Fantasy Pros rankers have him at 44, and you got Jalen Waddle at 49, where the pros have him at 61. So you have Waddle is like, he's not a startable wide receiver, probably a top bench guy, but Jamar Chase, you would go down as him. He's your wide receiver 3.
I mean, did y'all trust me with CeeDee Lamb last year, and did it work out for you? That's what I would say. Did you trust me with CeeDee Lamb, and did it work out? Because I think Chase is going to work out a lot the same way. I think he's the number 1 starting now. I think right now he's the number 1. So in Cincinnati, they're going to be losing a bunch.
You know, it's funny.
The biggest question that for him is, how long is Joe Burrow standing upright? In my eyes,
I push back on you about a lot of the like little tiny things, but I like when you're convinced. I push back. I think when you
get it to get the conviction out of me.
When you're not convicted, I think it bothers me somehow because you're really good. So when you're not convicted, I push you really hard. When you are convicted, I think it's something that people should listen to, because you just made the perfect point. You were so convicted on CeeDee Lamb last year, and I kept being like, really, dude? Like, I was not with you. I was like, they got like Gallup
Cooper
and they've got
Gallup,
Cooper, and it proved to be right. So when you're convicted like you are with this, I think it is something to listen to. And I think, like you're saying, Jamar Chase has a real opportunity to be a steal. Like in the Jefferson, think of what Justin Jefferson did for people. That was a guy I was crazy in on last year. And look at how he would have paid off. Jamar Chase would kind of be that for you as well. And Jalen Waddle, like I said, is a speculative. The one guy that you are lower than most on, no shocker, it's a Ratbird, 50. You have Marquis Brown at 50, where he is 42. Maybe a flex option in deeper leagues for Brown for Fantasy Pros, but you have him. You got him lower than Jalen Waddle, even though Brown is the number 1 there.
Like Marquis Brown, which is weird.
You do.
Well, look, he's a Sooner Raven, so no one's going to believe me when I say that. But I think the problem to me is them adding Rashad Bateman. I like Bateman a ton, but they also added Duvernay. They have Prochet from last year. Miles Boykin is still on this team. Mark Andrews is going to be the number 1 receiving option for them still. So they've added so many options. They say they're going to throw the ball a little bit more, which could work out for Marquise Brown, but he just hasn't worked out so far. And I don't know if it's him with Lamar. I don't know if it's just him. I don't know what the problem is, but it hasn't worked so far. I'm having a hard time believing in him moving forward. And then adding a first-round guy in Bateman, who is a possession wideout, I don't know, man. It's going to be a no from me, dog, this year.
This is a big one. We're going to move to tight ends, and I'm going to bury this lead for you for a second.
Okay.
Here are 3 different tight end spots. For the most part, tight end ones, whether you believe they are or fantasy pros that you don't agree with them. Adam Troutman, Bogman has at number 12 in a 12-team league, the last startable tight end.
I'm going to be the highest human being on Adam Troutman.
He's number 30 at tight end on fantasy pros. Bogman, well, just real quick, because we got a jam, but we only got snippet for Troutman. Why are you all in as a tight end 1 on him?
Well, they didn't replace Jared Cook with anybody. So Troutman's the guy, number 1. They didn't add a number two. And the biggest concerning thing about Troutman was he came in playing out of Dayton. So a small school. Can he block? PFF, number 1 rated run blocking tight end on over 400 snaps was Adam Troutman.
So he's going to in the game.
He's going to stay on the field, and he is enormous. He is a matchup disaster for a lot of teams, and the Saints are going to be passing that rock. I love Troutman this year. You don't have to take him at 12. You just don't have to. He can be way below that. Even in a 16-man league, he's going to go way below that. But I am in on Troutman this year.
I like 100%. It too, because you get in the red zone and teams double. That's where you double up Michael Thomas, and you got big old Troutman in there to be a 10-touchdown guy or something like that.
You're worried about those 2 guys, so Troutman's going to be open.
2 guys you're not into. Irv Smith is number 12 for the Fantasy Pros rankers. You have him down at 29, and Tyler Higbee, number 14 for Fantasy Pros, deeper league starting tight end. You have it 24. Out on both of those guys as startable tight ends in your mind.
I just think there's so many other guys. There's so many good tight end options in that 3rd tier, 4th tier. It's Henry, Tunyon, Troutman, Ingram, Hooper, Gesicki, Cook, Ebron, Ertz. There's so many guys he can mix in with any of those. I want to see it first before I invest.
Now here,
Higbee, I just don't like Higbee.
Here is the main course. Here's the dessert, as we said at the beginning. This is the dessert of the podcast. Bogman has Kyle Pitts as his number 3 rookie option if you got a rookie draft this year. Kyle Pitts coming in at number 4 overall tight ends. Of all the tight ends, Bogman, Kyle Pitts at the end of tier 2. That's going to scratch some personalities. There was a lot of, and what's going to be funny is there was a lot of negative takes when Kyle Pitts was drafted of people slamming the idea of him being a tight end 1. But now with Julio coming out, I wonder how people are taking that. You have officially planted your Kyle Pitts flag, Bogman. So let's hear it. Number 4 on your tight end list.
I haven't seen a tight end better than Kyle Pitts coming out of college. I just haven't, and I know that people say that, he's more of a wide receiver. Yeah, but he can block. He does it, and he does it effectively. He's not bad. He's not a bad blocker. He's not a liability. I tell you what's a liability is putting a corner on him because he will body him up and make the catch, and putting a linebacker on, he will run right past that linebacker, even in the NFL. I love Kyle Pitts. I'm obsessed. I will have many, many shares this year, especially if he's getting drafted at where he's going now. I think we might, when Julio gets traded, if Julio gets traded, we're going to see him rocket upwards. And it's going to be annoying to me because I'm in right now with Julio.
Well, and at least you planted your flag. Currently on Fantasy Pros, he's the number 9 tight end right now. So that's where he shows up when you take a look at it. When Julio, fair to your point, I mean, you having him over Mark Andrews is a big statement, but Andrews was a big fat failure last year from our overall expectations, I suppose. Still had 700 yards and stuff. But I think Pitts, I would see Pitts more, I don't think he belongs in the Kittle Waller tier, no matter how you feel about him. I think he's fine in this next tier, which is 9 deep, which are not 9 deep.
You know what I almost did? I almost made him his own tier, which I think is acceptable too.
I think that's acceptable too. I think people will move up, and I think you could, like, here's some arguments. If Aaron Rodgers were to go to Denver, I think people could get more excited about Fant, and Fant could move up.
But
if
they got
Jones,
Judy and Sutton.
No, I understand that, but
Amler.
I'm just like, I think Fant could move up. I think Andrews could move down a little bit. So if you're talking, where is it going to finish out from 9? I think people could get, I think he'll sit around 7 is the highest people will go once Julio Jones is out. So I don't think it'll be too annoying to you. This is your guy. You're going to draft him with aggression. And here's a big plug.
I want Troutman now. So
it sounds like you want, well, it sounds like you probably need to go play in the Scott Fish Bowl and have both of those tight ends here.
I didn't get invited.
Did you sign up? I don't think
you and Joe made me do it on Black Book.
Maybe it just hasn't come yet, or just we're not important to the industry. Well,
maybe not.
Here's one thing I would tell you. Check us out at patreon.com/ITLarmy, because not only will you get all the positional stuff, you can see the very exciting and aggressive rank of where Kyle Pitts fits on the overall. That's a whole nother ball game to talk about as well. I mean, he's a tier difference. That's why, and I think also something you will consider is like Waller and Kittle are quite a bit above. So I think that shows that he's either his own tier or he's the top of the next tier, but you've planted your flag. And that's what a lot of this is about. And you guys can go and check out this list to see where Bogman sits on his overall. You can start to consume this, and you can watch where it moves throughout the offseason. And we continue to do these. My ranks will probably be out a little bit closer to, the period of drafting, and like where we're starting to do our mock draft episodes and stuff like that. And we are going to have tons. We are going to have mock draft episodes, like for next week, because we are going to be conducting. Here's a great reason why you might want to be a part of our Patreon. We're going to be conducting a couple slow drafts, and we're going to be breaking them down on the episode. And the next 2 we're going to do are very fun because I will not be involved in them. I'm going to get blind drafts that are going to be presented to me, and I'm going to have to take some guesses and pick out my favorites, and Bogman will be involved in it. So next week, we'll be breaking down the first early PPR mock draft. What will then follow, and this is the tease why you guys are going to want to sign up for June on our Patreon, Bogman will have Superflex ranks, not just a mock, ranks. So we will tell you and talk to you about how you can consume them for 2 quarterback leagues and Superflex, and that will then follow a slow Superflex draft, which we will do the same process. And those will take us all into the start of the full-on prep season, where we'll probably be talking and breaking down a best ball, and we'll start up our mock draft series where you guys, if you're a part of our army, can draft with us for live mock drafts, which we break down on this podcast, plus ranks and guests and all the fun stuff that we like to do. Bogman, great job on the ranks, and I think people are going to dig it. And people could drop questions on your post too.
Absolutely. Please drop questions, or say, make points. If you think a guy is ranked too high or too low, tell me why, and I will tell you why I have them ranked where I do. So what my logic is. So at least let me give you my logic. You may not agree with it, but I guarantee you it's there. So
you can do that on the post, and you can do that on all the stuff that we got. So check us out, patreon.com/ITLarmy. Make sure you're subscribed to this podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/InThisLeague. We're trying to put some episodes up there if you'd like to watch and see our faces and get mad at each other and scream and yell and laugh about Shannon Sharp calling Julio Jones. You can do that there, and subscribe on Twitter @IsItTheWelsh and @Bogman Sports. That's it. We will be back next week for a little slow PPR mock draft breakdown right here on In This League. That's Bogman. I'm Welsh. Good night now, friends. Peace.